Turn it up, now we're back on air. Big games, big takes, yeah, we're going there. From the first hot mic to the final call. Nard Dawg Sports Show, talking ball. Headlines hitting, yeah, the day moves fast. We call the big shots, then we double back. From the fight nights, fairways, brackets too. Football Sundays, we're riding through. Win or lose, we still bring the heat. Talk it loud, keep it sharp, no retreat.
It's the Nard Dawg Sports Show, where the ball takes roll. Game time, prime time, let the whole thing go. Yeah, the Nard Dawg Sports Show, coming fast, talking goal. From the kickoff line to the final show.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, it is the continuation of the Nard Dawg Sports Show, College Football 2026 previews. Tonight, we are doing what I think this conference has a legitimate argument as the second best conference in the country. I really do. So we're going to do the second best conference, I think, in the country, the SEC. We got the boys down here south, my part of the country. I guess kind of Marsh's part of the country, but he's definitely more like ACC country, I would say. But I'm down here in Tampa, Florida. This is very much, SEC country. Well, you got two ACC schools here in Florida, but you got the Gators. That's the closest major school to me. The Florida Gators here in Gainesville, about 2 hours north of Tampa. But SEC is going to be, I think, a crazy conference. I think this SEC looks more like the Big 12 than it ever has before in terms of the parity and the variety of kind of teams from, I think the spot number 1 to spot number 13. I could see almost everyone beating each other. But Ryan, Max, C, what initial thoughts, comments on the conference as a whole?
Yeah, look, I think the SEC, you made a little jab there. With the second best conference comment, which I can appreciate. I know you guys are Big Teners, and
you think it's third?
Well, listen, the ACC obviously has the best team in the country, but I don't know that I could put the conference up there. So we'll have to pump the brakes on that. But I do think that there's a lot of good storylines in the SEC. I think there's a lot more competition. Listen, if the NIL killed any conference, it was the SEC, because I think Pete Golding mentioned something about 100 for the last 100 years. If you think that there hasn't been some tomfoolery going on in recruiting, you're an idiot. So I think the SEC was reaping the biggest benefits outside of the biggest Big Ten schools as well, which we'll get into. But all in all, I think it kind of put the SEC on notice a little bit. We've seen them struggle the last couple of years. We've seen a lot of turnover when it comes to these rosters and coaches, and every program in the SEC has money. It's not like some of these other conferences where maybe they aren't as well off as some of these schools from the South. So I'll be interested to see. I think you're going to see some real shitty teams knock off some good teams, and we see a little Big 12 aspect, if you will, with some surprises this year.
So the SEC is week in and week out, I think, the most fun conference to watch. But boy, has it fallen from where it once was. And you got coaches, you got media, you got everyone around the SEC all of a sudden coming out and saying that they might leave the NCAA, they might do their own thing. And at this point, it's like, where are you going to go without the Big Ten? Not only can you not win the national championship anymore, you can't even get to it the last 3 years. So for them to once be the most powerful big boys on the block, and to now their argument be, well, going to play at Arkansas is harder than going to play at Northwestern, is a pretty big fall from grace. They act like going to Kentucky is so hard. There are plenty of teams in the SEC that are just not very good programs from year to year. And I'm pretty sick of hearing about how great the conference is altogether. I will say, their bottom might be better than other conferences' bottom, but their top has really, really, really fallen the past couple of years. And going through this, the preview for this, they have great talent, but I don't think they have that many national championship contenders. And that's my early stance on the SEC.
Listen, a quick take on that, Ryan. I agree wholeheartedly with you. I think Greg Sankey has lost his ever-loving mind. I think he's a senile old man. The fact that these guys sit behind closed doors and think their shit doesn't stink is just mind-blowing to me based on their previous track record the last couple years. And I am so excited to see how this first year of SEC scheduling goes, where they play a 9-game gauntlet, essentially, is how they're referring to it, because they're so excited that they're playing more games in the SEC. They're taking more out-of-conference games out of the schedule. Listen, these guys are going to kill each other. Like I said, I think you're going to see more of these lower teams that actually knock off some big teams, surprisingly, and it only hurts the SEC at the end of the day.
Yeah, I agree with pretty much everything you guys said. Like I do think that the SEC, I like you look at it even compared to like the Big Ten and the like definitely the ACC and the Big 12. I do think that teams 5 through 12 are probably like a little bit higher quality if you lined them up and you know, made those 8-9 teams play the 5 through 12 team in the Big Ten or the ACC. So I do think the middle, like I don't think the bottom matters. The bottom 3 or 4 teams in every conference are going to be pretty awful, and you know, to varying degrees. So okay, yeah, Kentucky, that might be a 37-10 game instead of a 47-0 game, like in a different conference, but it's still a pretty easy game. And I'm just using Kentucky as kind of like a team that's kind of perennially been towards the bottom of the standings in the SEC, but. Look, I do have a trivia question for you guys. Who last played for a national championship? An SEC team or the TCU Horned Frogs? Trick questions, Ty. So let's move on to we're going to start at the bottom tonight. We're going to start at the bottom.
Well, one quick thing before we move on. You mentioned the hypothetical 5 through 12 matchup, and you forgot. The SEC has never lost a hypothetical matchup. So it's dumb to even talk.
That's true. That's true. Yes.
I love it. I love it.
We're going to start at the bottom tonight. We in the ACC and the Big 12. If you watch the full episodes, you'll see that we kind of started at the top in both of those conferences, and that wasn't anything that was strategic. I think the strategic part for us is we just kind of run out of steam. We've been doing like 2 to 3 hour recordings on each of these conferences, and once we get down to the bottom of the conference, and it's like there's not as much good information, there's not as much like exciting to talk about, and I think we have kind of like skimmed through the bottom of those first 2 conferences, which we're going to skim through the bottom of the SEC a little bit quicker than we do the top 2, but we're going to have a little bit more energy for the bottom of the SEC, probably do the same structure with the Big Ten, and we're going to start, I think it's pretty unanimous this year, the bottom of the SEC people seem to believe is going to be in Fayetteville, Arkansas. The Arkansas Razorbacks, Woo Pig Suey, probably looking at between coach turnover, talent on the roster, and the schedule that's laid out in front of them, we're probably looking at the worst team in the SEC here in the Razorbacks. Ryan, I'll come to you first. Ryan Silverfield takes over, comes over from Arkansas, brings a few guys over, but when you look at the preview notes on this team, there's not a whole lot to get excited about. Are you as bearish on this team as it seems like everyone else is?
Yeah, I am. It's hard to really get excited about anything, and anything that there is to get excited about seems like it's just somewhat of a hypothetical. They have a brutal schedule, I think, with Tall week 2, Georgia week 3, Tennessee, Auburn, South Carolina, Texas, LSU. I mean, it's just a regular SEC schedule, but for a team like Arkansas, there's not a ton of easy wins on it. I'm pretty bearish overall. I don't have a ton to add to Arkansas. I think the only thing you can hope is just build on something and get a few wins here or there that you can, build on for next season, because I do think it'll be pretty ugly.
Yeah, I think if you're trying to make a case that they're going to be a little bit better than people are giving them credit for in year 1 of the Silverfield era. Silverfield, did a pretty good job at Memphis. 50-25 there from 19 to 2025. He had 2 10-win seasons. Memphis is kind of a hop, skip, and a jump away from Fayetteville and the Arkansas campus. I don't know if it's fair, but I tend to kind of hold what previous coaches at a program like Memphis who, if they're making a jump to a major school from a mid-major like a Memphis, I tend to hold how the previous few coaches have done, after they've made the jump against kind of this next guy that's been up. And here it's like Justin Fuente went to Virginia Tech, crashed out. Mike Norvell, I mean, seat couldn't be hotter down in Tallahassee. And now Arkansas kind of just doing the same thing as those two schools who went and took Fuente, have taken Norvell, and just it hasn't really worked out. That system, the Memphis success has not translated to ACC success, at least at Virginia Tech and Florida State. So that is even tough, kind of new energy, new blood. It doesn't seem like Arkansas, the donors, the Waltons, the Jerry Joneses of the world, it doesn't seem like they're investing quite as much as Arkansas fan base would like in terms of NIL dollars and just liquidity into a program that really needs it to compete with the Alabamas of the world. But you got Calipari there on the basketball side. The basketball team's done very well, made it to the Sweet 16, and it just seems like the football program is really at a crossroads now, and they're trying to inject some energy with Silverfield, but we'll see. Marsh, anything on Woo Pig Suey that you're seeing that maybe we should be looking at a little bit differently and excited about?
Well, it's actually very interesting. Arkansas, to me, is we talked a little bit about Oklahoma State in the Big 12 episode and North Texas North, right? And now you've got, I'm no geographical major, but go out of the limb, Memphis South is Arkansas, maybe Southwest. I don't know. We can confirm. But I look at the roster and I'm like, he just brought everyone over from Memphis. Now, they had some exciting wins and plays last year. Sutton Smith and AJ Hill are going to be obviously key cogs in the offense. They know the offense. There's that familiarity there. But to me, it sucks that Sam Pittman got fired. I mean, Sam Pittman, I look at Sam Pittman, I visualize his face and I think pig suey. Like he's got an oinker on him. He's got a beef to him. He looks like he just fits the Arkansas hog build. And after watching that SEC documentary last year, I was a fan. I liked the guy. I mean, it sucks that you didn't pan out. You guys didn't win football games. I mean, shit, you went 0-8 in SEC play last year. That's dog shit. But I look at it, I mean, Ryan Silverfield comes in, a little injection of life. They had 30 departures in the portal, 42 additions. I don't think you can get a bigger roster turnover than that. And then looking at it overall, they have the toughest schedule in the SEC. So realistically, I'd like to see the SEC and Sankey, they want to have this whole conversation about the SEC being better than sliced bread. We're going to a 9-game in-conference schedule to show everybody, how tough it is, blah, blah, blah. I'd like to see it be more like an NFL schedule, where if you think your conference is so tough, I think the top people should play the top people from the previous year every year. And I think that the bottom people should get a little break and play more of the bottom teams, right? So like we look at the Kentuckys, the Mississippi States, the Arkansas of the world, they should all have each other on the schedule. Texas, Georgia, Oklahoma, all the big dogs, they should be playing each other. It doesn't really help nonetheless because it would be death by 1,000 cuts essentially, but it's more feasible to do something like that if you think if you're big dick swinging conference, right? Like, sure, it may hurt your hopes, but your SEC champion is vetted. They're proven. And if they go to the college football playoff, that's your best bet. You're not getting somebody who had a weak schedule go in there and just run into a Notre Dame, a Miami, or somebody else and get embarrassed.
Yeah, and look, I mean, it's hard to say that Arkansas should go into Salt Lake City and beat Utah, but like, hey, Sankey, if the bottom of your conference is so strong, like it should be able to compete with the second, third, fourth best team in the Big 12, right? Like, I mean, at least keep the game competitive. We'll see. We'll find out week 2. Let's move on to the Kentucky Wildcats. Also, another team that is bringing in a new coach. They bring in Will Stein, the offensive coordinator from Oregon the last few years, working out there with Dan Lanning. He's a Kentucky native. Made some headlines this week at SEC Media Days here in Tampa, really kind of pumping his own tires, pumping the program's tires, and talking a big game about what Kentucky could potentially do, not necessarily this year, but in the, in the next few years, talking like they could be the next Indiana, the next basketball school to kind of really make some noise at the national level in football. The jury's out for me on Will Stein. I think he's a good X's and O's coach. Is this personality that we're starting to see from him? Is he just trying to basically replicate and copycat what Curt Cignetti did at Indiana? Or is this authentic and this is who he's truly going to be? He's going to be a quote machine, but he's going to back it up on the field. Time will tell. Max, I'll come to you first for the Wildcats. What do you know about what's going on in Lexington, and what do you think Kentucky does this year?
Yeah, Kentucky Wildcats. I actually am a huge fan of Will Stein. The guy developed Dante Moore, Bo Nix at Oregon. He was an apostle of Dan Lanning, who I appreciate as well. I think just his style and his demeanor, just kind of that hard ass, like we're gonna work our tails off. No excuses. It's a little Vrabel-esque to some extent, but also a player's coach at the same time. I think Will Stein kind of brings that to his cousin fucking state of Kentucky, and it's going to be interesting to see. Their schedule is a gauntlet: Alabama, Texas A&M, LSU, Oklahoma, Tennessee, Florida, Missouri, and then out of conferences Louisville, who we talked about as arguably top 3 team in the ACC. So it's tough to say that he's going to be successful year 1. However, I look at this team long term. I think there could be some Mark Stoops like success here. It's never going to be super flashy 10-win season. We're going to be a threat in the SEC, but there are certainly going to be some 8 wins, some 9 wins that maybe come from Will Stein, I think. And once he gets his recruits in, now, granted, they've got one of the top offensive lines in the country. I think CBS Sports ranked them the 3rd best offensive line in the country, which was an absolute weakness last year, flipped to a strength. I think ultimately the guy can develop quarterbacks. And we look at Jaden Daniels even a couple years back when he was with him. So I think overall this program is on an upward trajectory for a middle-of-the-pack SEC program. I don't know that they're going to be contenders just based on the history and the money and, some of these massive programs that you have down in the Southeast Conference. But I do think that he will turn the Kentucky program around and get it to be respectable. I just don't think that's this year with the schedule that they have. So all in all, I like Will Stein. I think over 4.5 wins, I wanted to take it up front, just knowing what his background is as a quarterback whisperer and the offensive line that they have and just some of the pieces there. But the reality is I look at that schedule and I think Florida's better. I think Tennessee's better. Louisville is no cakewalk. So when you look at a gauntlet of 9 games out of your schedule, I think 4.5 under actually looks a whole lot better for this program, but don't let it fool you. Kentucky will rise again.
Yeah, Ryan, the way I want to present it to you is I would imagine, and I'd have to go back and look, I don't have it in front of me, but I'd imagine the year that Cignetti took over, the first year of the 12-team playoff, they were probably something along the lines of about 25 to 30 to 1 to get to the playoff preseason. That's what Kentucky is. They're 30 to 1 to get to the playoff this year. Is there any value in taking a flyer and kind of just sprinkling the chance that Will Stein finds that year 1 magic like Cignetti did a few years ago?
So despite everything I said earlier, the difference between that year and this year is Cignetti's season that year, I believe, started week 10 when they played Ohio State. Up until that point, they had no hard games. Kentucky opens 2 of its first 3 games with Alabama and Texas A&M this year. I do not think that there is a chance they have any time to build momentum and do anything close to what Curt Cignetti and Indiana did that first year. Their schedule is, I think it's the ranked 11th hardest in the country. I don't have a whole lot to add besides what Max said. I went in, I did my research. I said 4.5 wins. This is an easy over. I like Stein. I agree with a lot of what Max says. I think he's going to get Kentucky right back on the right track. But then I looked at their schedule, and it's Youngstown State and South Alabama. Besides that, there's no games on that schedule where I'm like, that's an easy win.
They're definitely going to win, yeah.
So I went in saying, I'm taking the over 4.5. And then I looked at their schedule, and I think I'm firmly on the under 4.5 now.
I meant to throw this piece in too. So Will Stein gets Kenny Minchey to transfer from Notre Dame. Let's not forget, Kenny Minchey almost beat out C.J. Carr for the top quarterback spot at Notre Dame. And now C.J. Carr is labeled as Heisman favorite, their national championship favorites, all this shit. Now we know Notre Dame's schedule kind of blows, and we can talk about that later. But that's a big get for a quarterback guru, a quarterback whisperer like Will Stein. So I really like to see that. But also the quote that Will Stein had at SEC Media Days was kind of like the Signetti quote last year of Google me. It's kind of the new one this year, which I feel like is kind of funny. So I'm going to read it. It says, "This is going to sound really arrogant. I think because of me, to be honest, I think because of me, I know what it takes. You just got to put the football down and play." Is basically his response to how he thinks the team's going to do this year under him, which is hilarious because it's absolutely arrogant. But I kind of like it. It's a little bit of flair. It's a little bit of swag. You're bringing that demeanor to Kentucky of all places, and you bring in Kenny Minchey, who is supposed to be this top quarterback, and kind of got rebuked from Notre Dame essentially for C.J. Carr. So it further makes me think that UK, Kentucky Wildcats, they will rise again, but it's just not going to be this season.
Fair enough. Let's move on to the Mississippi State Bulldogs, the Fighting Brandon Walkers from Barstool Sports. We are entering year 3 of the Jeff Lebby era. I think it's fair to say that they showed considerable improvement in year 2 of the Jeff Lebby era. They went from 2-10 in year 1 to 5-8 last year. Started the year off 4-0 and then lost an overtime game at home to Tennessee, 41-34. And that kind of started looks like a 4-game skid for them. They ended up beating Arkansas in about week 9, week 10 for their last win of the year. So they ended the regular season at 5-7. They still got to a bowl game, it looks like, and lost to Wake Forest in that bowl game, the Duke's Mayo Bowl. But look, Mississippi State is a program. If you go down all the way to the bottom of the Nard Dawg Sports Instagram page, one of the videos I put out last year when I first started doing these picks was Mississippi State hosting Arizona State, and I talked about how I liked the Mississippi State team last year. In Arizona State was coming off a playoff appearance, and people were high on Levitt and Tyson and Dillingham. And I said, I think Mississippi State's going to win this game. I like them plus the points at home. It was a night game week 2, and they did it. And that was part of that 4-0 start. This year, obviously, a little bit different. They have some returning pieces that I think are important to them. They've got Fluff Bothwell, who I just love saying that name. He's their running back. He's a stud. But Starkville, Mississippi, they just don't have the same kind of top end talent that some of their peers in the SEC have. Ryan, I'll come to you. Hard not to respect a program like Mississippi State who finds ways to be competitive in a tough conference like this, but not a ton to be excited about in terms of potential Cinderella run in this conference this year. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think there's very little to be excited about overall. I mean, Kamario Taylor is a fun player, so I guess that would be your bright spot if you're looking for one. But Jeff Lebby just really doesn't excite me much. I feel like they were worse at the end of last season than they were at the beginning of last season. And I'd be lying to you if I said I really kept up with the injuries and how their season really played out. But I know it wasn't very competitive, a lot of the games. And I think he's kind of the perfect kind of representation of Mississippi State as a head coach. just not a whole lot to get excited about. That's just kind of how I feel like I always feel about Mississippi State, and that's exactly how I feel about Jeff Lebby right now. I don't think there's a coach in the SEC I wouldn't take ahead of him.
Interesting. Okay. Max, what do you got on the Bulldogs of Mississippi State?
Yeah, listen, more cowbell. I love it. I love that that's a thing, but it feels like Mississippi State to me is caught in a time loop. I look at their last couple quarterbacks, Nick Fitzgerald, Will Rogers, like they're all the same fucking person. It's this beefy quarterback who looks a little bit more muscular than he probably should, who's inaccurate with the passes, but runs for a shitload of yards, likes to bulldoze people. We've done the same thing with Kamario Taylor. Like now, Jeff Lebby, great. It's not a conventional pocket passer, fits the offense better. He showed some flashes. He had like 5 touchdowns, 1 interception passing, almost 500 yards rushing and 8 rushing TDs last season. It's just a time loop down in Starkville. We get the same guy behind center. We get the same results. They never seem to get it done. They'll probably give somebody a scare. I just look at Mississippi State and I think to myself, Jeff Lebby, he's just it's unfortunate. He's caught in this time loop. There's nothing really he can do about it. This team's going to underperform once again. He's going to hear cowbells in his sleep for the rest of his life. And realistically, he's going to have to find a new job at the end of the season because it just hasn't worked out there. To your point, Nard, Fluff Bothwell, God, I hope that guy has an incredible season. I don't know that he will, but if your name's Fluff, that's fantastic. I go back to Jim Furyk's old caddy. His name was Fluff, had a beard, smoked cigarettes. Iconic. I'll never forget that. Hopefully it's the same case for Fluff Bothwell. But we'll see. I think Mississippi State, it's the same old, honestly. And when I look at their roster, one thing that stands out is Jaden Rashada. Can we talk about this cat for a second? I mean, he's like a freaking $10 hooker. He's been to like 8 different programs, had to file a lawsuit against Florida because he didn't get paid for his services that he never even did. It's like he literally is just a hooker. I don't understand. Miami was the original commitment. Thank God he didn't go there. I mean, that would have been devastating. We offered the guy the sun and the moon and the stars on top of it. And he was like, no, I'm going to go to Florida because they offered me $13 million verbally. And ultimately, he didn't get that money. Well, guess what, buddy? You need things on paper these days. So how's that going to work in this scenario? Is this guy just coming in to polish footballs, or is he going to create some turmoil in the locker room? I don't know. Nothing excites me about Mississippi State. Sorry, Brandon Walker. It's the same shit every year. Just move on.
And I do want to say I liked Jeff Lebby's personality on that Netflix SEC show. I think I actually got caught rooting for him. I might have bet on them a few times in the middle of last year when they were just getting throttled by everyone. And I got real sour on them and became a real sore sport.
Yep.
Netflix will do that to you.
I'm neutral on Lebby. I think he's a pretty good offensive coach. I think he might be a better offensive coordinator than he is a head coach, someone to lead the program. But, like I said, let's give them a shot here in year 3. Let's see what they do. They're not completely devoid of talent like in Arkansas. They're SEC level talent. They were competitive in some real SEC games last year. Should have beat Texas at home. Could have beat Tennessee at home. They got hammered too by some teams like Georgia, like Missouri. But I think one of the more interesting things about this Mississippi State team is they're one of the teams that has a Big Ten out of conference game on the schedule. And Phil Steele, he's got Mississippi State as the 14th best team in the SEC. He's got Minnesota as the 9th best team in the Big Ten. Mississippi State goes to Minneapolis to play Minnesota in week 2. But that's a game where it's like, okay, SEC, like if your bottom is like much better, then this is a game that Mississippi State should probably win, right? Like prove that the bottom beats kind of that bottom of the middle tier in the Big Ten, right? We'll see. We'll see if it happens. But those are the type of games, like we know Ohio State, Texas, like that's a clash of Big Ten, SEC at the very top, right? But like we got Mississippi State and Minnesota. We've got Ole Miss and Louisville. We've got some games like with SEC teams kind of against similar tiered teams in other conferences. Let's see how they do. Let's move on to the Plains, guys. Let's move over to Auburn. And we've got a new head coach, third out of four teams that we were starting this show with a new head coach. The Auburn Tigers bring over Alex Golesh, who I'm pretty familiar with. He was at USF here in Tampa for a couple years and had a dynamite year last year. He's bringing over his quarterback, Byrum Brown, who I think, that guy is, he was an AAC stud, at least in terms of his ability to use his legs and distribute the ball with his arm. I don't know how he's going to translate to the SEC. I don't know how this roster, basically completely rebuilt roster, is going to do in the SEC in year one for Golesh, but I love Golesh's energy. He's a good young coach. It seems like he's kind of re-energizing the Auburn fan base, and there was a good amount of support at the spring game, and headlines have been fairly positive about him and what the players and the guys are saying about him. He's engaging with the important boosters and the fan base. So seems like things are off to a good start through, off season one of the Alex Golesh era and on the Plains for War Eagle. So yeah, I'm bullish on Golesh as just in general as a program builder at Auburn. We'll see how it goes in year one. Marsh, I'm interested to hear what your thoughts are and your, forecast is for the Auburn Tigers in year one of Alex Golesh.
Yeah, call me biased for War Eagle here. Not because of Auburn, but because I took my last 2 college courses at USF. So technically I'm a USF grad, alumni, Bowls, what's up? But honestly, Alex Golesh has been incredible. He's a good football coach. I don't care what anyone says. The guy came to USF. He turned a 1-11 program around. He won 23 games in 3 seasons, went 9-3 last season. Honestly, the games that he lost, ran into the buzzsaw in Miami, of course, but Byrum Brown and the boys, he had that team humming. And I think coming into an SEC program where he's going to get some more resources under his belt, I like what Alex does. He's a tempo builder. He's an offensive guy. I mean, DJ Durkin is still there as well. So when we look at this team overall, they've got the pieces on the staff there. You bring in Byrum Brown, who is one of the more experienced quarterbacks, dual threat, but he's not a dual threat. We just talked about Mississippi State, Kamario Taylor. It's not a run first guy. Byrum Brown truly is a great thrower of the football. There's a little bit of improvement, but he's got the arm talent. He's got the legs. He's a smart player. He's experienced. I like what they're doing here at Auburn. They brought over the pieces that mattered from USF, but it wasn't a North Texas North at Oklahoma State or a Memphis Southwest at Arkansas. This is truly just, hey, we're going to bring a couple pieces that make sense. But we're also going to keep some of these key players at Auburn. They did a good job selling these guys on, hey, this is going to be the culture. This is going to be where we're headed. And I look at Xavier Atkins in particular on the defensive front. DJ Durkin is just a linebacking machine. I mean, this guy builds a linebacker core. I love it. Listen, he had 84 tackles, 17 tackles for loss, 9 sacks last year at the linebacker position. He's an All-American level player. So I like what Auburn has been doing. The defensive continuity is great. Now, granted, they lose a couple pieces, but it's one of those things where if Cam Coleman doesn't leave, I think Auburn is the wrecking ball that the top teams in the SEC don't want to see with the new additions. Now, of course, that's easy to say. It's like, okay, you can't talk about additions and subtractions at the same time. But Cam Coleman going to Texas is certainly going to hurt. I think replacing him, the receiver room, you bring over the top receiver from USF, so there's continuity there with Golesh and Byrum Brown. However, I like the culture that's being built there. I like Alex Golesh. I like DJ Durkin. I like Byrum Brown. I mean, I think when you look at Xavier Atkins running the defense, you've got a smart player with the green dot. Listen, there is certainly some things to be happy about if I'm an Auburn fan, and I hope we see some TPing of trees sooner than later with this team and this program.
Yeah. Ryan, this program's lost 7 games, exactly 7 games for 5 years in a row. Their over-under this year is 6.5. If they were to hit 7 losses again, that would be a pretty clear under on that 6.5 number. So do we see Auburn in year 1 of the Alex Golesh era? Do we see them buck the trend and not have 7 losses or more in year 1 and maybe get to 6-6 or 7-6 and win a bowl game? Or do you think we're going to see year 6 in a row of at least 7 losses for the Auburn Tigers?
I'm glad you asked me this because this is my pick of the night. Over 6.5 wins. I absolutely love that number. I think you bring Byrum Brown and Golesh from South Florida. You look at what they did last year and you look at what the problem at Auburn really was the offense. And that is what I think they are going to be able to fix. And Max mentioned it. DJ Durkin is there, and they had a pretty good defense last year. They held Oklahoma to 24. They lost 24-17 to Oklahoma, 16-10 to A&M, 20-10 to Georgia. So they were holding these good teams early in the season to not scoring that much. They just couldn't score themselves. So I think that if they can fix the offense, they have a great chance to win over 6. And as I looked at their schedule, yeah, it's tough. It's an SEC schedule, but Baylor, I think they can win. Southern Miss, I think they can win. Florida, I think they can win. Vandy, I think they can win. Tennessee, I think they can win. They have Samford late in the season. Arkansas, Mississippi State. I think they have 8 very, very winnable games for them. This is, of course, counting on Brown being good, but I do think he's a good quarterback. They are actually my sleeper pick for the college football playoff at plus 900. Am I very confident in that? No. And I don't even know if I will place it yet. But of all the odds I was looking at and how much I like this combo of Golesh and Brown, that number kind of stuck out to me. It's hard to, before you see him play a game, it's hard to make that bet. But that might be a bet after week 2 or 3 I place some money on.
I don't hate that. That probably requires them to get at least 1, if not 2, of these wins between at Tennessee, at Georgia, at Ole Miss, or at Alabama. That's 4 of their 5 road games. You probably have a chance at 9-3. Although I don't think we've seen a 9-3 team get in the college football playoff, right? So you probably have to be at least 10-2 to feel confident. So that means, a
9-3 SEC team is getting in this year.
Yeah,
with
probably
the,
7.
With the
They certainly
extra
could.
game.
7 and
They
7
certainly
and 5
could.
team probably.
Yeah, so I mean, it definitely could happen. 9-3 is on the table. Their home schedule, I think they could go undefeated at home. I mean, they've got Baylor to start the year in Atlanta, another litmus test game for old Sankey boy. And then they got Southern Miss, they got Florida, they got Vanderbilt. So they don't go on the road until October. They go to Knoxville to play the Volunteers, and then a rivalry game at Georgia after a bye week. And then, I mean, the second half of the schedule gets considerably tougher. But yeah, I mean, at Ole Miss, Arkansas at home, at Mississippi State, bye game Samford, and then at Alabama. Not impossible, right? I kind of like the you putting your nuts on the table and back in War Eagle here. They've got the schedule, they've got kind of the new coach energy, the quarterback, like the defensive coordinator returning. Auburn could be a really interesting team come October, going to Tennessee, going as a 4-0 Auburn at Tennessee. Tennessee we'll get to here later in this show, but winnable game. And then can you beat Georgia or Ole Miss or Alabama on the road? All are probably going to be favorites, but Auburn last year, what do we got here? We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 one-score losses in the SEC. you could give them a 7th if you count the Georgia game, which ended up being 20-10, but they should have been up 17-0 on Georgia in that game and got kind of screwed on a really bad call by the refs. But they lost basically all of their games last year in the SEC as one score kind of coin flip type games. And you're right, the defense was good. They got their defensive coordinator back. So I like the Tigers, and I think they're for them to be considered, kind of the 13th best team in this conference. There's some validity to this being a very deep conference for sure. Probably more flat, but deep at the bottom. So let's move on. Let's go to Nashville, home of Marsh's favorite NFL team. But we're going to talk about the Vanderbilt Commodores, coming off what I feel like has to be considered the best season ever in Vanderbilt football history, right? I know they had some success under James Franklin before he moved on to Penn State, but I mean, 10-3 last year. I think they finished 14th or 15th for the college football playoff, kind of right on the outside looking in. Magical season under Diego Pavia. Only losses were at Alabama and at Texas, and then their bowl game, which no one really cares about bowl games anymore. But they finished the regular season 10-2 with only losses at Alabama and at Texas. So obviously they lose kind of their do everything quarterback in Diego, but I think Clark Lee is an excellent coach. I think Vanderbilt has some real money to spend in this NIL era. They brought in a 5-star quarterback to compete with a veteran and Jared Curtis. I'm very interested in Vanderbilt this year. I think over 5.5, to me, that might be one of my picks of the night in terms of just buying in on the Clark Lee stability and buying low on maybe a program that people feel is due for a major drop off with losing Pavia. But I like Vanderbilt, and I'm excited to hear what you guys think. Ryan, I'll come to you first on this one. Where are you on year one post Diego Pavia Vanderbilt Commodores?
I'm right there with you. I think that over 5.5 number is intriguing as well. I think that interesting enough that Auburn game week 4 might be key for them. So I don't know how both those teams can hit the over, but Vanderbilt does have some other winnable games with a stretch where you play Arkansas, Kentucky, Mississippi State. In the SEC, you don't get much better than that. They have Austin Peay, Delaware, NC State. So there's some winnable games. Florida, Tennessee. I like Clark Lee a lot. When Michigan job was open, his name was floated a little bit. I didn't see it too seriously, but that would have been a name where I don't think it would have been a very sexy hire, but I think that would have been a hire where I would have been very confident that shit would have got turned around, because I think he's a great coach. I think he's proven that. You do what he did at Vanderbilt in the SEC, it's very, very impressive. And this might be crazy to say, I don't know if they will actually miss Diego Pavia as much as you would think right off the top. Obviously, he was a Heisman-level quarterback, but I think they're going to be able to do a lot of the stuff they did the last couple of years with him, with a new quarterback. So I like the over 5.5. I like Vanderbilt and the trajectory of their program still, the money, the school, the city. So I think if you're Vanderbilt, you do everything you can to hold on to Clark Lee for as long as you can.
Marsh, I think there's a lot of things working in Vanderbilt's favor. It's the number one city, I think, in the SEC. Austin's very cool too. Thinking about now the Big 12 teams that the SEC's brought over, but I mean, it's either one or two with Austin, right? So you got one of the best cities in the SEC that you're recruiting to. I think Diego Pavia and some of these comedians, like it's weird to even bring up, but like some of these comedians, you got Nate Bargatze, you got Theo Vaughn, like you got some like cool pop culture, like guys that like younger 17 to 22-year-olds like look up to and think are cool, funny. Like there's some real, like this isn't like, oh, we caught lightning in a bottle with Jay Cutler back in the day. And like, there's some real kind of positive momentum trends with this Vanderbilt program that you can point to and say, no, this program can recruit and compete at the highest level with the Georgias, the LSUs of the world. Do you see it the same way?
Well, let's not forget Florida, Auburn, Penn State all came calling for Clark Lee. And Clark Lee told him to kick fucking rocks because he played fullback of all positions at Vanderbilt University. The guy is dedicated. I don't know if you watched the SEC documentary last season. He basically went there with his best friend. He basically said, hey, I'm not going anywhere. We're going to build this thing into a national title contender. And I love Clark Lee. What better way to build a foundation like that than to do it at your alma mater where you're saying, we know that we sucked for a long time. We've never proved anything. We've never done anything. Last year was the first taste of success at Vanderbilt University. And why not parlay it with the NFL team that's going to take the biggest rise this season and the Tennessee Titans? I mean, if we're looking at overall win totals, I'm taking over at Vanderbilt. I'm taking over on the Titans. I think the city of Nashville is absolutely fucking buzzing this season in the football realm. You got busting with the boys out there, probably pumping everybody's tires along the same way. I love what Vanderbilt is doing. I look at Jarrett Curtis. Jarrett Curtis was a 5-star quarterback. When the hell is the last time you heard a 5-star quarterback go to fucking Vanderbilt University? Okay. He took Georgia, cucked the Bulldogs, and said, I'm going to Nashville. It's a better city, better looking women, better pro football. That's where I'm going. And I love every second of it. So I look at this team. Martell Height is a player that stands out too. We've got the Travis Hunter of the SEC finally. Sure, Travis, nothing against him. Absolute phenomenal athlete, incredible player. We saw what the Jags did to trade up and get him as a two-way corner and wide receiver. I'm interested to see how that works in the SEC, frankly. We're playing with the big dogs here. Number of plays, the production, I would like to see how that turns out. But Cedric Alexander comes back. Guy had 15 touchdowns at the running back position last year. I mean, that's the definition of stabilization when it comes to offense. It'll give Jarrett Curtis, who I ultimately think is going to win the starting nod, a little bit of breathing room, a little bit of security there. But I just want to call out, too, what Clark Lee has done for this program. Look at the transfer portal. Look at the players that have come to Vanderbilt, not left Vanderbilt. They have come to Vanderbilt. C.J. Jackson from LSU. Micah DeBose, Alabama. Cole Adams, Alabama. Ricardo Jones, Clemson. Kobe Sellers, Texas A&M. I mean, the list goes on, and that's not even mentioning some of the Big Ten and ACC schools. But you're talking about a program that used to be the toilet paper of the SEC. They were the dude wipes of the Southeast Conference. And now Clark Lee has turned the ship. He's turned the tide. And I love seeing it. No better city to see success. I hope they pack the stadium. I hope they get a stadium renovation, frankly, just build it into, some of these Alabama, LSU, Oklahoma type cities, Texas, whatever it is, because this town can support it. And Clark Lee will provide.
Yeah, sounds like we're all pretty aligned. We're all, fairly bullish, and it doesn't sound like any of us would take the under. I look at their schedule. I think I can find 6 wins on there between Austin Peay and Delaware to open the season, and then an NC State game at home in week 3. NC State will be another litmus test game for the SEC, but a winnable game for Vandy. And then, like Ryan said, you got in the middle of the season, you go Arkansas at Kentucky at Mississippi State with a bye game in between the 2 road games at Kentucky and Mississippi State. Can you beat Tennessee at home? Can you beat an Ole Miss at home? Can you go to Auburn? Could you go to Florida and pick up a win in one of those games where maybe more of like a toss-up game? This program, this coach have shown that they're able to kind of win a close game, win games against teams that they're not supposed to. So I kind of love this over a 5.5. It's not even real crazy juice. I don't think it's -130 over 5.5. That's in the
The,
running for me, boys, and my over under of the conference on this one.
the craziest thing is Vanderbilt has the easiest schedule in the SEC. So you combine that with everything we just talked about, there's a lot of confidence to take that bet. And I think, frankly, we're all highly responsible to do so at this point.
Yeah, and that takes us to the next team, which I just realized going over the tabs. I missed this tab. It's the Missouri Tigers and Eli Drinkwitz, who I'm going to try to tee you guys up because I don't have a whole lot to add to this. The only thing I have to add is Eli Drinkwitz maybe being the biggest clown of SEC Media Week when he said if they just could schedule a little easier out of conference games. And then you go and look at who they scheduled last year, and it's Central, Arkansas, Kansas, Louisiana, and Massachusetts. So he said if the SEC just scheduled a little easier out of conference games, they would have a better chance of winning the national championship. I thought that was just crazy. But Casey, what do you have on the Missouri Tigers and Eli Drinkwitz this year?
I mean, it begins and ends with Ahmad Hardy, who I think got a gunshot wound over the offseason. It sounds like he's been cleared to play. He's going to be good for the start of the season. Quite frankly, he's one of the best running backs in all of college football, if not the best running back in college football this year. The guy is a legitimate stud. I know that their offensive line is returning quite a bit, so I think that leaning on the run game, working Austin Simmons in these first couple games, you got, it's a easy out of conference schedule again. They go to Kansas. I don't hate Missouri and Kansas playing. Their historical rivals. Kansas is not the greatest. They're not the greatest program, but that's not Missouri's fault. Kansas, Missouri, they border each other. The Kansas City are so. Missouri, Kansas is a game I'm fine with. Their other two out of conference games are Arkansas, Pine Bluff, and Troy. Troy's at least a respectable G6 program, G5 program, whatever you want to call it, but it's going to be a run game. It's going to be a run game team. Austin Simmons, he's the one who kind of lost the job to Trinidad Chambliss at Ole Miss, but solid quarterback. I think Trinidad is just was better for the Lane Kiffin system last year, but I don't think Austin Simmons is a guy that you look at as a complete failure at Ole Miss. He just kind of got beat out by lightning in a bottle type guy in Trinidad. So the defensive turnover is going to be tough on Missouri this year. They were very active in the portal, trying to fill some holes on the defensive side of the ball. I think their secondary is primed to get kind of ripped apart by some of the better passing teams on their schedule after that out of conference schedule wraps up and they really get into the thick of their SEC play. But look, I would say I'm definitely a little bit more bullish. We're talking tiers. This tier is probably South Carolina, Mizzou, Vandy, and Auburn, kind of in that bottom middle of the SEC. And I'm probably more bullish for sure on Vandy and Auburn, and probably even South Carolina with Lenore Sellers and some of the pieces they have coming back. But look, I do think Drinkwitz, his comments were ridiculous, but I like him as a pretty good, stable coach in Mizzou, Columbia, Missouri. So I would say more bearish than bullish this year, but they're going to be a tough out, competitive team, and I wouldn't be shocked if they win some games that catch your eye throughout the course of the SEC season.
I'm looking right now. The over-under is set at 6.5. Casey mentioned that open with Arkansas, Pine Bluff, Kansas, Troy, Mississippi State, and Florida. Seems like a very reasonable opening schedule. Max, what do you think? Do you like that over 6.5 number? And what do you think of Missouri this year?
I don't know that I like the over. Listen, Austin Simmons, it's a shame. Trinidad Chambliss is in his late 30s like me and just very experienced. It's hard to compete with something like that from a mental perspective when you have the physical traits. But I do think he's a good quarterback. Listen, Ahmad Hardy, this is not fantastic in what happened to him, but the fact that this guy makes a living on running the football, absolutely was an incredible running back last year, one of the best in the country, and then gets shot in the leg. And Eli Drinkwitz goes to SEC Media Day, and they asked him, hey, can you provide us an Ahmad Hardy update? And he says, John Wayne rode after he'd been shot. He turned out all right. In reference to Ahmad Hardy's recovery, who just got shot in the leg, we're talking about 1950s movie stars and cowboy western flicks getting shot at each other, and that's the reference that we're throwing out as Eli Drinkwitz. And this guy's a fucking clown. Okay, I don't think Missouri. We talked about Alex Golesh. We talked about Will Stein, guys that we think are going to turn the culture, turn the program around. This guy's going to be on the streets after this season, and Eli Drinkwitz. I don't believe in Missouri Tigers at all. I think when you're throwing John Wayne quotes about catching stray bullets about your best player in the backfield, I'm baffled. The guy's a buffoon. Good luck to Austin Simmons. You got out of the Ole Miss situation, and you might get a chance to prove yourself. But you lost Damon Wilson on the defensive front, your best defensive pass rusher. He went to Miami, of course. But it's just there's nothing here. I can't hitch my wagon to anything in this Missouri team. I don't like the coach. I don't like the staff. The players, Ahmad Hardy's recovering from something that's severe, and we do wish him the best recovery, obviously. I would love to see him come back and perform at a high level because he was such a great running back last year, and I want him to get his in the NFL as well and be a high draft pick. But I don't see it. I'm not buying into it. I don't give a shit who they have on their schedule. I don't think they're beating Florida. I don't think they're beating some of these mid-tier SEC teams. I think this is going to be a laughingstock. Drinkwitz has shown the door, and the only thing drinking is him at the bar after this season.
They're not firing Drink. Like he's gone 29-10 his last 3 years. The guy's a good coach. He's been pretty loyal to them. They seem to really like him there, unless they lose to like Arkansas Pine Bluff and Delaware or Troy, whoever. Yeah, Arkansas Pine Bluff and Troy, like, and they go one and like this guy. They're gonna be. Their over under is what 6.5. Like they're not expected to be great. So
cool.
even if they go 4-8, they're not firing Drinkwitz after this season.
Cool.
So
have fun winning 5 games a season with Drinkwitz. Like I'm glad that
they've gone 11-2, 10-3, and 8-5 the last 3 years. They don't.
Yeah. You're not gonna win. You're not gonna win anything with that guy. I'm telling you right now. So obviously, I'm not a Mizzou guy. I think there's some question marks. Eli's had a great career at Missouri. Who knows if he actually gets on the hot seat? I just think that he's not the guy long term to get it done. But another team that maybe is a little bit of a hot seat and a true hot seat is South Carolina. And we look at the Gamecocks. But Nard, what are your thoughts down in Columbia, South Carolina?
So there's obviously some pieces that I like, and everyone's familiar with the names. You got Dylan Stewart on the defensive side of the ball, came in as a true freshman a few years ago and just kind of took even the SEC and the college football world by storm with some of the plays he was making as a true freshman on the defensive line in that conference. But he's a stud. He'll be a top 10, top 15 draft pick in next April's NFL draft. You got Lenore Sellers, who many were talking about being a first-round quarterback pick in the NFL draft this past spring. Had a really rough year last year. I think that them bringing Kendall Briles to be the offensive coordinator, run the offense. Kendall Briles is, look, say what you want about his dad and the scumbag piece of shit his dad was, but Kendall Briles is a legitimate, like, kind of quarterback and offensive savant in college football. I think Sellers and Briles together, Sellers getting the ball out to Nick Harbor, like they got 3 legitimate, like probably first round, if not first round, then early day two type picks on this roster. They were aggressive in the portal, attacking the offensive line, but there's also some things that, like, do they have the defensive star power, the playmakers, dynamic playmakers on the defensive side of the ball outside of Dylan Stewart? Is their offensive line going to come together with all the portal additions? So I would say, gun to my head, I'm probably taking the under 6.5, just given the difficulty of the schedule that seems to be in front of them this year. Their kind of non-conference power 4 team that they play is obviously the Clemson Tigers at the end of the year every year. They open the season with 3 winnable games in Kent State, Towson, and Mississippi Mississippi State at home, but then the schedule gets pretty daunting from there. They got road trips to Alabama, to Gainesville to play the Gators, Oklahoma, Arkansas, and then Clemson, with home games against Georgia and A&M and Tennessee kind of mixed in. So, man, I think it's possible that they have a better team this year than they did last year, but don't see much improvement from that 4-8 record that they posted at the end of last season. So, man, I'll go back to you, Marsh. But yeah, the Cox, I think, going to be a difficult year for them.
I totally understand that. For me, listen, I like what they did. They know they've got a player in Lenora Sellers who was running for his life last season. Granted, he's a mobile QB, but I think they know that to get the most out of him, he can't be a one read and somebody in his face type quarterback. So for me, I like that they were so aggressive in the portal with offensive line. I mean, you got guys from NC State, UCF, East Carolina, and then you got 4 more guys outside of that. So it's just the offensive line room. It's gotten tight. Let's be real. I mean, I hope there's some square footage there because they brought in a ton of big boys to try and figure that out. And it's probably going to be a sweaty, nasty mess in the film study. But outside of that, I think Lenora Sellers, I love that he came back to college. I knew, listen, everyone was talking about the traits. He's Anthony Richardson 2.0. If he would have went to the NFL this season, for this upcoming season, this previous draft, it would have been a nightmare. I think he would have got drafted to a place that he wouldn't be able to develop, wouldn't have the supporting cast around him. And when you're built like that, when you're a middle linebacker playing quarterback with rec specs on, it's not a great signal to the NFL, especially when you look at the only person that's really been successful doing that is Cam Newton. So I like what South Carolina has done bringing Lenoris back. Shane Beamer's still there. There's continuity. They've really invested in the offensive line. Dylan Stewart's still there. And then Nick Harbor, who a lot of people compare as like the poor man's Calvin Johnson. He's got a DK Metcalf type build to him. These guys, the reality is Frank Beamer just goes out and recruits the most physical specimens of all time and just hopes that it works, is basically what it comes down to. So I'm hoping that there's some excitement here. I want to see these guys that were just built in a lab between Sellers and Harbor and Stewart. I want to see them be successful to some extent. Listen, the reality is it's going to be middle of the road again. I don't see huge potential, maybe some shock, but at the end of the day, the South Carolina Gamecocks are going to be exactly what they were last year.
Well, I'm glad that you guys went first because I'm on the complete opposite side of you guys. I think they are going to be a much improved team from last year. You guys mentioned they have the top end talent. They came in last year, I think, thinking they were going to have a big, great year and just kind of got a little ahead of themselves, had some tough losses, but I think the way their schedule shapes up, 3 not easy wins, but 3 wins to start the season. And I think that they can actually compete and beat some of the top end SEC teams. So I think they're going to definitely improve this year. I like the over 6.5. I think I like some of the numbers of these lower end mid-tier teams more than the higher end mid-tier teams. I just think that South Carolina is going to have a good year. I'm buying in on Sellers. I'm trying to buy low on him. I think that I think they have a real shot. And the only thing that really concerns me is the end of that schedule is just so brutal with Oklahoma, Texas A&M, Georgia, and Clemson, 4 of your last 5 games. You could be 7-0 going to that and still lose 4 of your last 5. So that does concern me some, but I think Beamer gets them turned around a little bit, and I think they improve this year.
And let's not forget, if we're keeping tabs on the Key and Peele name skit, Nitro Tuggle at the wide receiver position. Absolute phenomenal name. Hope that guy is in the fucking Bolitnikoff race.
The one thing I kind of go back to, And fair, unfair, you guys, tell me. But when you, as a coach, are starting to get on the hot seat, you're what was their record at the time? Looks like they were 3-6. Yeah, 3-6. They go into College Station, Texas last year. They get up 30-3 at halftime, and they find a way to lose that game and blow it 31-30 to Texas A&M. Like, to me, that becomes kind of like a bad omen, and a mark on the resume that's very hard to get over. It's one of the biggest kind of blown halftime leads we've seen in college football and Power 4 college football in a few years. And can Beamer, like the fact that he got Stewart and Sellers and Harbor to come back and they didn't leave the program, like that's a good sign. But man, if they have another rough year and end up getting rid of Beamer after this, it's gonna be hard not to look back at that blown 30-3 halftime lead and not think that was kind of the beginning of the cascade to end his time in Columbia, South Carolina.
I watched that game live, and if I recall correctly, I had South Carolina minus a half point on the spread in my betting. And needless to say, I was at home. My only daughter at the time was home. And there were some choice words thrown around. That was probably the most idiotic, embarrassing loss I've ever witnessed in my entire life. And it like, I was dumbfounded just watching this team come back from what seemed like the most insurmountable place I had ever seen. So there may be some bias towards South Carolina. It was a little bit of a chafing my ass, but I'm with you, Nard. I don't know how you come back from that. I don't know how you overcome such an embarrassment as a head coach, but Shane Beamer, more power to you, man. You followed your father's footsteps. You did it right. You got to an SEC program. Your father was stuck in the ACC. Call a spade, but you haven't done shit. And you kind of need to do something. So if it's going to happen, this is the year. If not, yeah, let's light a fire under that chair.
Well, let's move on to, hey, Rocky Top, Tennessee. Best song in all of college football. I'm sorry. Like, even like a couple years ago when Tennessee was beating Alabama for the first time, like one of Saban's the last few years, and they had that crazy like 52-49 game, and then like it's just Rocky Top time after time after time. Like, hard not to get swept up in Rocky Top magic. I love when Tennessee's good. I love when they're in the mix. They got some bad news over the offseason. They lost their quarterback, their veteran quarterback from last year, who they were hoping they'd be able to get one more year of eligibility out of in Joey Aguilar. But the Faison Brandon, the 5-star quarterback, the Faison Brandon era starts now in Knoxville. Heupel, he brought in Nico Velova, or whatever that fucking guy's name was, who's at UCLA now. They got to the playoff. They lost to Ohio State, and that was a tough matchup. But Heupel's a very good coach, in my opinion. Brings in Jim Knowles to lead the defense. Knowles was that defensive coordinator in that matchup with Ohio State in the playoffs a few years ago. Good defensive coordinator, and let's see what Heupel can do with kind of his second 5-star quarterback now to develop and turn into kind of his project for the next 2 or 3 years. Ryan, I'll come to you. Do you think Heupel and this stud freshman are interesting this year, or are they going to be in the mix? Are they going to be in the title race come mid-October with some big games on the end of the schedule, or is this going to be a kind of a rough transitional year for the Volunteers?
It's hard to really say until you see that 5-star freshman get out on the field. But every instinct in my body has me saying no, they are not going to be in it. I think Heupel he's awesome with quarterbacks, but having a true freshman run that system seems like a lot of responsibility, especially with that SEC schedule. Georgia Tech, week 2 is not a super easy out-of-conference game. Texas early, Alabama, it's a brutal schedule. And the win total being 7.5 is one where I definitely like the under. I think it's just going to be more struggle than not with a freshman quarterback. And I also think that Knowles year one has had a little problem at places. I think it's a pretty complicated defense from what people say. And it's not super easy for everyone to just to catch on, especially with just one spring. It might be one of those defenses that takes a year or two.
100%. We saw that with Ohio State. It was very, very marginal improvement in year one when he came to Ohio State. We still kind of got tore up in some of the biggest games that we had in the year one of the Jim Knowles era. But once he kind of had a couple off seasons to really get guys familiar with the terminology and the scheme, the structure of the defense and how he wants it to be played, it really came together well. I think he's a good coach, but I think you're right that it may take more than one off season to really click on all cylinders. Marsh, hey, old Rocky Top.
Rocky Top, Tennessee. I love it, dude. I'm with you. I think outside of the orange and white picnic garments, Tennessee absolutely nails it with Rocky Top. Now, the picnic garment things, that's a whole nother story. You look a little embarrassing.
The checkers? I love the checkered end zone.
Listen,
The checkers.
I love the
awesome.
checkered end zone is great. The checkered fucking overalls that these people wear, a little bit too much, okay? Or that's full throttle and the aggressive, if you will. But no, I think Tennessee, listen, it's interesting. I mean, Joey Aguilar losing the whole lawsuit thing while Trinidad Chambliss, which we'll get to in a second, ends up winning. It's a whole political nightmare. I don't know how all that shit works. It's kind of crazy that that's the world we live in right now. But Faison Brandon being a 5-star true freshman coming in, George McIntyre, they've got some pieces. It's a matter of what works from that perspective. Deshaun Bishop is there, obviously SEC back and player of the year most likely. I think realistically Tennessee is in a good spot from a roster perspective if the quarterback position pans out. Now I look at Josh Heupel, I love what he's doing, and obviously bringing in Jim Knowles, and you guys talked about this, just kind of the system, the multiple fronts, the disguises. It's a lot to learn for some of these kids first year when it comes to that scheme. But I mean, what I love is realistically, I just am a huge Josh Heupel guy. Let's be real. College football, it's different than NFL, right? NFL, I tend to lean more toward defense, and I like to see these guys dominate. College, I like to see points scored. I like to see the crazy air raid schemes and whatnot. Not saying that that's what Heupel is, but he's a great offensive coordinator. And the funny thing about all of this was really from Media Day that made me laugh, where he's talking about Lane Kiffin's return. And he brings up, I hope we stock up the grocery stores with mustard and the sporting goods stores with golf balls, because the last time that Lane Kiffin came in 2021, his return to Knoxville, they were throwing mustard bottles and golf balls at Lane Kiffin. And Josh Heupel just fueled it and said, everybody better be in stock when LSU comes to town. I fucking love that. We need more of that shit. You know, that is what the SEC is about. It's a cutthroat, if you are my rival, I'm going to shit on your doorstep type rivalry. And I love that Heupel's out here making comments about buying mustard bottles and golf balls to throw at Lane Kiffin when he makes his entrance as this fucking fake tan coming through the tunnel at Neyland Stadium. So give me Tennessee stock when LSU comes to town. I love every second of that. I'm going to mark that one, circle it on my calendar. I don't give a shit how good Tennessee is. I'm probably taking Tennessee in the points in that game if LSU's not a dog shit team. And then obviously, I think Tennessee as a whole, again, comes down to quarterback play. I think they've got a lot of talented pieces on that front. Jim Knowles shores up a defense that just got absolutely shredded through the air last season. So I like buying stock in Tennessee. I'm not saying SEC title. I'm not saying college football playoff. I'm saying probably 9-ish, 10-ish wins. Going to come just short. But Rocky Top is vibing. And I think ultimately they build some more pieces around it. and the Tennessee Volunteers will be close to a top of my list, especially with the young talent they have on the roster going into 2027, 2026. Just, I think they're going to be that top tier, just missed team.
Yep. No, it's interesting. I was actually just flipping as you were kind of giving your breakdown, Marsh. I was flipping through the Phil Steele preview, and he's more bullish on the offensive line than some of these other previews are. He's got Tennessee offensive line ranked as his projected fourth best offensive line in the country this year, tied for first in the SEC with Missouri. So
Wow.
that's encouraging. He typically, when he kind of deviates from the rest, he's got a reason to, and he likes some of these portal pieces better than others, I guess, and then thinks they'll gel. So you give Heupel a very solid offensive line. Steele's also got he's got the linebacker group as the sixth best linebackers in the country. So you give Knowles a solid group of athletic kind of foundational linebackers to build around there in the middle of the defense. Those are two kind of good foundational pieces for the offensive coach and the defensive coach. But yeah, can Faison Brandon come together? Ryan, you saw last year, super highly touted 5-star freshman quarterback, mobile, had some moments, but it's hard. It's hard to really have, that 5-star talent translate in the Big Ten and the SEC. Heupel's a better coach than the butter knife situation that Underwood had last year. But how much better and how much more can we expect than kind of what we saw out of Bryce Underwood last year?
That's impossible to really answer. You would hope Tennessee fans would hope he's a little better than Underwood was last year, but it's a very tough thing to lean on a freshman quarterback, to have him step up in the pocket when he has a fifth-year senior D tackle coming free. Does that freshman stick in the pocket and make the throw he has to, or does he tense up a little bit and throw one high that gets picked off? So until you see it, you can't really make the judgment. But I'm gonna make the guy prove it to me always before I give him the benefit of the doubt. So I'll root the kid on, but I always think it's tough for a true freshman.
Yeah, Ryan. I think you hit the nail on the head with Faison Brandon and the Tennessee quarterback situation. It'll be interesting to see. Let's move on to one of their rivals, though. One of their chief rivals. That's the chomp Florida Gators. Bringing in another new coach into the SEC this year. What is that? We got Auburn, we've got Kentucky, we've got Arkansas. Is this the fourth new coach now that we're talking about in the first 8-9 teams of the SEC preview? So won't be the last, but it's definitely the next one up. And we've got the former Tulane head coach and John Summerall coming over to Gainesville to kind of recenter and reset the Florida Gator program after a pretty disastrous Billy Napier era up in Gainesville. I'm here in Tampa. I know a ton of Gators fans, and there was really starting to be some indifference over the program and over the lack of leadership that Napier was bringing to the table for the Gators. But look, from what I can tell so far, there seems to be pretty good excitement about Summerall, kind of a tough, hardo type guy who hopefully will bring some discipline and some fresh energy to Gainesville. It's a campus I've spent some time on in my previous career. I think the Gators have a beautiful campus. It's a school that really gets behind the football, basketball team when things are going well. And I'd love to see the Gators get back in the mix and kind of start competing for playoff spots and national championships again. I think they're one of those brands that college football can be better when the Gators are interesting, or at least a second program in Florida. It's fun when either Florida and Miami, or Florida and Florida State, or Miami and Florida State are good at the same time. Right now, it's just Miami that we can point to as kind of a true playoff and national championship contender. But maybe that changes with this new coaching hire. Marsh, I'll come to you first. What do you make of the Gators here with John Summerall?
Yeah, listen, John Summerall's got a proven track record. It's just not at a big school. And so it's going to be interesting to see. And I like his demeanor. I like kind of the culture, tone setter. I was absolutely gut laughing when somebody's phone went off at SEC days and he literally threatened to throw the freaking podium at him. Said if you were in my team meeting, it'd basically just be a travesty. You'd be gone. So the fact that he is threatening reporters' lives by throwing big pieces of wood at them, I like his demeanor. I think that's what the Florida Gators need. They need a little physicality. They need a little Vrabel-esque, hard-nosed football culture within the building there. I think bringing over Aaron Philo from Georgia Tech, Eric Singleton. Eric Singleton's an outstanding player, bringing him over to Florida. And then you look at Vernell Brown and Dallas Wilson. The receiving room is really good. Jaden Ball was a stud at running back. I mean, the offense should be a lot better than what we saw last year. And DJ Lagway, it was obviously a massive, massive disappointment. So the fact that he's kind of bringing in this culture reset, he's bringing in some really talented players. I'm interested to see. I don't think Florida's an overnight change. I really don't. I'm not high on Florida. I think overall they've got some pieces, but I look at them like I look at Florida State in the ACC and just the travesty that happened there. Florida kind of experienced the same thing with Billy Napier, just not to that basement-like extent that we saw with Mike Norvell. So it's a big lift. It's a big lift for John Summerall. I like him as a person. I like him as a football coach. They've got talent. I just think that it's not a 1-year turnaround. I think they're going to take a couple years to really get that program to where he wants it.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair. And it probably will. It was a pretty bad culture up there under at the end of the Billy Napier era. But Ryan, plus 400 odds, so not crazy that they could get to the college football playoff. Over under 7.5, so they'd have to kind of win a couple games. They're maybe not necessarily supposed to, but look, I think we should see some steps in the right direction. Are you kind of feeling the same way?
Yeah, I'm feeling that way, but I'm not going to lie to you guys. I am having a little bit of a meltdown right now. I was just reviewing the notes again and thinking about Greg Sankey and what he's been worried about this week when he should be worried about why the fuck does Florida not play Tennessee this year? What is going on? I don't know how I missed it up to this point, but you're talking about you're going to leave the NCAA. You need to get your own conference together. What is going on? That is one of the best, most fun rivalries we have. And it's just gone all of a sudden. That just blows my mind. I just couldn't believe that. I just checked the schedule multiple times. That aside, I'm kind of with Max. I don't think this is a super easy turnaround. I do like Summerall. I feel like I, for some reason, ended up watching and betting on Tulane a decent amount last year. So I kind of followed them. I think he did great. He kind of maxed out what you could do there. You saw what happens when a team like Tulane faces a focused team like Ole Miss. They're just overmatched. But I do like Summerall. I'm with Casey, too. I hope he gets it turned around in Florida. College football is better when Florida is in it. Florida and Florida State. I love that rivalry too. If it was up to Greg Sankey, they would never play again. But Florida is a great, great program. The Swamp, when it's rocking, it's awesome. I hope they get a little better, but I do like the under 7.5. And this is a team that I'm pretty not negative on overall. It's just a lot of unprovens, and in a tough conference like the SEC, I think unprovens and especially unproven quarterback play is going to be tough to turn it around quick.
Wow. So I'm looking at it. I did not realize that. I did not realize that Florida and Tennessee did not play each other. And I'm looking at their schedule. Florida, LSU don't play each other.
I mean, Greg Sankey can get fucked. What is going on?
How do you add a conference game and then get rid of matchups like Florida, LSU and Florida, Tennessee? So this will be the first time in 37 years that Florida and Tennessee do not play each other in the regular season. The Gators and LSU are not playing each other. They'll miss each other this year for the first time since 1970. They've played 55 years in a row and are not playing in 2026.
So let me get this straight.
And you have the Lane Kiffin Florida LSU drama. He's leaving Ole Miss. Is he staying at Ole Miss? Is he going to Florida? Is he going to LSU? Like, I mean, talk about yeah, LSU at Ole Miss. That's going to be like the marquee Lane Kiffin takes all the headlines type game. But LSU Florida could have been like right there behind because he was considering both of them for sure. But I'm looking at this article on Yahoo Sports. It sounds like Alabama and LSU will not play. It's not this year, but at some point in the next few years, Alabama LSU is not going to be a game that's on the regular season schedule in the SEC.
Let me get this straight. Greg Sankey says we're going to go to a 9-game SEC schedule, but we're going to take away the most important fucking rivalries in that schedule. Make it make sense, Greg. You want to be behind closed doors? You want to talk about how the SEC shit don't stink? And you do this kind of shit? It makes zero sense to me whatsoever. The fact that LSU and Alabama are at some point not going to play each other. You had Nick Saban return to LSU after taking the Alabama job, and Miss Terry had to bring holy water from the fucking church to sprinkle around because she believed in the voodoo from the bayou and that there was going to be some bad juju around that game. That's the kind of rivalry gravity we're talking about here. And you don't have Bama LSU playing in the future. You don't have LSU and Florida playing this year. I mean, how many misses can you take? Get Greg Sankey the hell out of Dodge. He's an awful commissioner. He doesn't know his head from his ass. And we're talking about we're focused on the dumbest shit possible when it's right there in front of you. And college football is the easiest thing in the world to manage from a schedule standpoint. You put as many rivalries in front of them as you can. That's must-see TV, buddy. You want revenue, you want viewers, you want money. That's how it works. Get them out. Get them out. Show them the door. Don't let it hit you on the way out. You're a fucking moron, Greg Sankey.
Crazy, man. I like
It's sad.
the fact that we don't get Florida, Tennessee, Florida, LSU, like, you know, but it's like at a certain point, it just becomes like, that's why we don't need 16-team conference. Put Texas and Texas A&M and Oklahoma back in the Big 12. Like, let's balance things back out. Make sure that rival teams are playing each other. Let's have some kind of regionality. Let's recreate the Pac-12 and put Oregon and USC and Washington and UCLA back in. Like, this is crazy. It's so stupid. And next year, we don't get to see Alabama, LSU, kind of a staple in October, November. Like, now they are protecting some, like Alabama, Auburn, and Florida, Georgia, and Tennessee, Alabama. Some of these games are protected where they're permanent, but I don't know, man. Looking at a Florida regular season schedule and not seeing Tennessee or LSU on there is crazy. I mean, just really, really stupid. I had a couple more things. You know, look, I think Florida, you look at the talent they have on their roster. I think there's some real talent that you could be excited about, specifically at the skill positions, right? Jaden Ball, stud running back. I think if they get an offensive line put together that can block for him, he's going to have another big year. He ran for almost 1,200 yards last year, had 8 rushing touchdowns. Had another 31 catches. So he's a really good running back. I like that Buster Faulkner, the old Georgia Tech offensive coordinator, is coming in to be Summerall's offensive coordinator here. He obviously produced some really strong running back years in the past. So again, all comes down to the offensive line. But if they can get a good offensive line put together, Buster Faulkner and Jaden Ball should combine for quite a nice year on the ground. And then the receiver room. Dallas Wilson, I watched him play last year against Texas. I was like, that guy might be the best receiver in the country over Jeremiah Smith. Like, he was doing things. He fought injuries basically all year, but they got him back. They got Vernell Brown. They got Eric Singleton Jr. They got real weapons on the outside. Aaron Philo, transfer quarterback in from Georgia Tech, familiar with Buster Faulkner's offense. Sounds like he's going to be game manager plus type of guy, which may be good enough to really, take care of the ball. Don't turn it over 1,800 times like DJ Lagway did, and just get the ball, follow the offense, follow your cues, get the ball to Jaden Ball, get the ball to Dallas Wilson, Vernell Brown, Eric Singleton, and just rely on that defense and John Summerall's toughness and infusion into the defense. I think this team could. I think there's a path to hit the over and get to 8 wins, 9 wins this year. But if the offensive line doesn't come together, if Philo is a turnover machine like Lagway was, they're probably not getting there. Probably looking at another 5-7, 6-6 type year, and trying to build some momentum at the end of the year for a good year 2 under Summerall. Anything else on the Gators? We good?
That's the show, now you know. This is how the real ones roll. Big thanks, good night, see you down the road on the Nard Dawg Sports Show.